May 21st, 1980, British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher stood at a podium at London's Royal Festival Hall, about the size of where we are sitting today, and delivered what would become a historic speech, a call to arms that swept the UK, the US, and still haunts us today. Hers was a call for austerity, for sweeping tax cuts for corporations, for a neoliberal economic model for which she declared there is no alternative. Exactly. This doctrine has been come to referred to, as some of you may know, by the shorthand TINA, or there is no alternative, sort of a cute name for not a very cute idea. And TINA still echoes in the subtext of pundits today who defend Thatcherite economic policy. TINA is still used as a bludgeon against those who would believe that indeed another world is possible, a world that centers people, not profit, that believes in democracy, not despots, and that trusts nature, not corporations. One of the clearest voices to unmask this limiting ideology and its many ramifications, particularly for food and hunger, and to paint a picture of possibility is Raj Patel. As an author, a teacher, a filmmaker, a podcaster, a colleague, and a comrade, Raj is a Pied Piper of possibility, helping clearly diagnose the systemic drivers behind our most entrenched problems like hunger and the climate crisis, and show real alternatives. Many first discovered Raj's brilliance in his seminal 2008 book, Stuffed and Starved: The Hidden Battle for the World Food System. His next book, The Value of Nothing: How to Reshape Market Society and Redefine Democracy, dissected the damage of misguided market fundamentalism. In 2017, he partnered with his colleague Jason Moore to write A History of the World in 7 Cheap Things, which tackles, just the small story of the history of capitalism. And in 2021, he published Inflamed: Deep Medicine and the Anatomy of Injustice with Dr. Rupa Maria, exploring the intersections of health, social justice, and the environment. Most recently, he's taken the world by Substack storm, where you can find him at rajpatel.org. And alongside all of this writing, Raj has so deeply engaged over many decades with social movements around the world. As he likes to say, he's worked for the World Bank and the World Trade Organization, and he's protested against them. The last time I saw Raj was in the mountainous city of Kandy in the heart of Sri Lanka, where he and I were joining a gathering of more than 700 farmers, fishers, pastoralists, workers, artists, and more for a global gathering for food sovereignty. A frequent guest on Democracy Now!, Raj is also a member of the International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food Systems, a fabulous resource for all of us who want to understand the food system. And as if this were not enough, Raj may also be, according to some, the Messiah. Seriously, some of you may have heard this. Back in 2010, the leader of a global cult-like religion convinced his followers that Raj was the Messiah that they had long been waiting for. As the New Yorker reported at the time, the Messiah, according to this leader, would save millions from starvation, and Raj wants to overhaul the food system. The Messiah would be South Asian. Raj is of Indian descent. And as the New Yorker noted, Raj's recent appearance on the Colbert Show, Raj had addressed the hosts with a, quote, halting delivery that brought to many believers' minds the prediction that the Messiah would speak with a stutter. Raj continues to deny his messianic status, but according to this leader, the Messiah would, quote, show humanity the steps which it should take to regenerate itself, to create a civilization based on sharing, cooperation, and goodwill, unquote. And there is no question that Raj has touched millions, has helped us believe that despite the Thatcherism, another world is possible, and find our courage to fight for it. So please join me in giving Raj a warm Bioneers welcome as I pass it over to my friend and possibly the Messiah, Raj Patel.
My goodness. Comrades, look, thanks, Anna. Thank y'all for being here. And let's just get things out of the way first. As my mother said, he's not a messiah. He's a very naughty boy. And let's take it from there. I have just 17 minutes to do a lot. I have to talk about this. I want to give you the gift of a bunch of Italians. I'm going to be just walking us through some history that I think is really useful right now. I've been concerned with thinking with a lot of the social movement comrades that I work with, concerned to help locate where we are and when we are in the world. And what the gift that I want to share is an understanding of when we are on the clock of the world and what that means for the actions and activism that we can together undertake at this moment. So, let's ask this question. Well, what time is it on the clock of the world? I mean, we may think, well, this is a time of catastrophic climate change. It is a time of resurgent authoritarianism and a police state. It is a time of pandemic disease. And yes, we've just come through one pandemic, but knowing what we know about the industrial food system, we know that yet more is being incubated for us, and we haven't learned the lessons of the last one. So then, let's ask a deeper question. When was it last like this? And this is where I want to introduce our first Italian, a man called Giovanni Arrighi. He died in 2009, one of the greatest political economists of the 20th century. He observed something about the way capitalism works. Now, capitalism, as you know, is the process of taking money and turning it into commodities and then turning it back into money again, right? This is the standard Marxist way of talking about capitalism. Capitalism is the motion from money to commodities to money. Money to commodities to money. That process is capitalism. But when capitalism becomes a state-driven enterprise, there are some patterns that emerge. And Arrighi noticed that, look, when a nation rises to hegemonic prominence, what happens is first, the people who take money and turn it into commodities, they are the business people kind of leading the state. They are at the front of a hegemonic bloc. And these people are in a sort of material phase of enslaving people, committing genocide, wiping out land and then reclaiming it and then using that to turn money into sugar or into cotton or into tobacco or into oil or into automobiles. That process of material expansion is the first part of how countries accumulate. And then at some point, the profitability of this business falters, and there's a crisis, a signal crisis, at which point some other capitalists step in. The capitalists who take commodities and turn it into money. The bankers. At some point, the industrialists or the agricultural frontierists cede power to the bankers, and the bankers then run the government for a little while, and sometimes there's a bit of a recovery, and then there's a terminal crisis, and things fall apart. And that's what is happening in this, because when you think about how empires rise, you've got material expansion, a signal crisis, and a terminal crisis. And then a sort of an interregnum where it's not clear what can happen next, but it's a time of monsters and possibility. And then, so we can look at this and think, well, here is the Dutch Empire, then here is the British Empire, and then here is the American Imperium. And that's helpful, because now we can start putting some dates on things. We know that 1945 was when the US began its sort of major process of material expansion. And we know that in the 1970s, and so that's really from the sort of mid-60s to the late 70s, there was a period of crisis and massive social upheaval. And the bankers took over. And led to there is no alternative by the 1980s. And then in 2008, we've really sort of hit the skids, and now we're in the terminal crisis of the US. But let's look back. Let's look at the past and think, well, look, before 1945, we know that the British were sort of powerful, but when exactly did they go to hell? Well, 1917 is a good time to look. And if we think about 1917 as the terminal crisis of the British, then we've got a couple of decades in the middle where it wasn't clear what was going to happen next. And I want to suggest that we're in that time now. That we're in a time of incredible danger and possibility. Because in 1917, what do we have? We had pandemic disease, we had the Spanish flu, we had, through those decades, we also had the rise of the far right, and we had catastrophic weather events. In the US, we had the Great Mississippi Flood in 1927, when the Mississippi was, depending where you measured it, between 60 and 100 miles wide. We had massive flooding, we had extreme weather events all over the place. And what I want to suggest is some of the movements that emerged, that had their foundation before the crisis but emerged through it, are movements that can help us overcome where we are at the moment. And the reason I want to suggest that that's possible is because of another Italian Marxist who you should know. Antonio Gramsci. Can you just raise your hands if you've heard of Gramsci? Thank you. Those of you who haven't, he's going to be an important part of your lives because he has this idea of counter-hegemony that we need right now. The idea of counter-hegemony is that when you have, the capitalists aligned, the financiers and their friends in the government and the police and ICE, what have you, we also have the possibility of pushing back against them. We can knit together across the working class, with some fractions of the bourgeoisie as well, a coalition that absolutely pushes back. And we have examples of this to look to, and examples really born in the food movement. And the example I want to share with you are these comrades. Does anyone know who these are? These are the Mondine. These are Italian rice harvesters, an incredible group of women. And it was mainly women and mainly migrant workers who were part of some of the most incredible anti-fascist organizing, but before that, counter-hegemonic organizing, building a movement that absolutely fought fascism and won. But to understand that, we need to understand a little bit about rice. First, so Italy is the European Union's largest rice exporter, and most of the rice gets grown up there in the Po Valley. But the migrant workers came from everywhere. And Italy was, a young country at the end of the 1800s. And you had comrades coming from, workers from the sort of toe of Italy, from the sort of ball of the foot, from the heel, everywhere, and ending up in the fields in the Po Valley. Now, what you know about rice is that it is a nasty crop. It involves flooding, and it involves weeding. So for 40 days in every season, there would be the monda, the rice weeding season. And you would need extra labor to come, and so they came. And they met each other along the way, and they discovered in one another a shared humanity and a shared goal of being able to survive the work that was ahead of them. Because there was massive pandemic disease. There were, and I had to check these figures, 2 million cases of malaria every year in Italy. And between 20,000 and 100,000 people died every year of malaria. The women of the harvest were right in the front lines, in these mephitic fields. And they fought and they organized with doctors, with public health experts from across Europe to be able to fight that scourge. But what they also did was study. They got together and they understood that in order to be able to overcome the incredible working conditions that they were up against, they needed to understand who was in charge. They needed to understand how to negotiate. And when you study like that, someone has to look after the kids. So they created networks of care to make sure that there were infrastructures to be able to feed people. So again, you have childcare and you need to be able to feed people, as well as study and organize militancy. And this organizing process where you're learning about capitalism, where you're learning how to read and write, because many of the women were struggling with literacy, and part of the movement was to be able to understand the world you're in. All of that happened as part of the organizing process. And that meant that when the Federation of Workers was started in 1906, Argentina Altobelli Bonetti was the leader who was produced by this movement. She went on not only to lead the Workers' Federation of agricultural workers, but all trade unionists, all the way through 1926, when the union was dissolved by the fascists. This amazing activist was produced by a series of events that generated all kinds of cross-industry solidarity. So, for example, women put themselves literally on the line to stop the trains leaving the Po Valley freighted with rice, not only for themselves, but they won the 8-hour working day for industrialists in the city. And they won it before they themselves got the better working conditions that they'd been fighting for. They understood that their liberation depended on the liberation of the comrades in the cities and vice versa. And that idea of solidarity is incredibly important because it allowed an understanding of how it was that they were going to be able to ultimately to fight the fascists. And all of this has long-term effects. I mean, the last Mondina left the fields in 1960. After 1960, there was a referendum in Italy about whether there should be a repeal of the divorce laws. And of course, feminists were adamantly for keeping divorce on the books. And if you look at a map of Italy, you'll see that where the votes to preserve the divorce laws were strongest was where the Mondina had come from decades before. And if you look now at Italy, and look at the share of women in city councils, where you see more women in city councils are where the Mondine were organized a century before. There's a straight correlation between where the Mondine were most active and the results generations afterwards. And if you look where more nursery schools are, you can see that generations later, more nursery schools are associated with where this solidarity was being fomented, where the study was happening, where the care was happening, where the food was being distributed. All of that happened because of this counter-hegemonic bloc that was being forged. This was the gift of food workers to people who hadn't even been born. Now, the one thing also that was quite important was that this movement became the media. They understood that in order to be able to organize, you need people's attention and you need to structure their understanding of how the world works. One of the songs that they developed was a song about rice weeding. And you know this song, at least one person does. This song is Bella Ciao. Can you raise your hands if you've heard the song Bella Ciao? I'm so glad, because I mean, one of the things about living in the United States is how crappy your protest songs are. And it just, I mean, comrade, I mean, you know, we shall overcome. No, you want something that's like, and that's what Bella Ciao offers. So you should also look at the political structure of this song. Before it became an anti-fascist anthem, which is how most people know it, it was first written as a song about work and about solidarity. So in the beginning, it's alla mattina, appena alzata, oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, 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 alla mattina, appena alzata, in risaya mi toccar andar. Okay, and that means in the morning I got up, oh bella ciao, in the morning I got up to the paddy fields, I have to go. But at the end of it, it becomes something quite different. It becomes this: but the day will come when we all work in freedom. So Bella Ciao, the thing that you think of as an anti-fascist anthem, actually began as a song to be able to articulate what it is to be in solidarity and what it is that we're fighting for. The vision, the dream, the result of all our study and our care and our food is this. Do you see how this song works as political education, as political theater, as media? But what we'll need is not just good media, but good solidarity. And so I wonder if I might be able to ask you to sing along. And we'll just sing the first verse, so just to get you into it. But your homework is not only to be able to sing the rest of this song, but to be able to weave the movement together that builds us all together. So let's just start, though. Let's pick a note. Alla mattina, appena alzata, oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Alla mattina, appena alzata, in risaya mi tocca andar. You'll work on it, I know you will. But comrades, look, this is what I think we need to understand. First of all, there is a dignified emergency in the working class right now. Meeting that is just a basic requirement, and we need struggles around food to be articulated with other struggles, particularly struggles around care. If we are to survive the climate crisis, we need to recognize how central the care economy is to be able to overcome this climate crisis and rebuild something better. And we have to generate our own media. Sing that song, people, sing it. And we need to understand that our liberation requires study and understanding that our liberation cannot happen without the liberation of everybody else. And this leads to power. Now, we've seen movements generate people like Argentina Altobelli. There are movements today that may generate someone like this. Now, look, this is a tremendous bloke, and I'm working with a series of comrades to try and support some of his grocery initiatives. But I'm not in the business of hero worship. I think we need to be in and against the state, because we need to understand that there's only so much structurally that this person can do. Even if they are fantastic, we need movements that produce lots of people like this. And the good news is we have them. So I've been working with movements around the world who, by the way, understand that we are in the interregnum right now, that we are in a period of monsters, and they are watching the period of US decline with precisely horror and optimism. Because all of a sudden, outside the United States, there's a lot more possibility that can be imagined. And I think it's important to recognize, so first of all, if you're interested in more of this, agrowingculture.org has our care and resistance work there. What we did was work with movements like Abahlali Basem Jondolo, the shack dwellers movement in South Africa, with the MST in Brazil, with West Street Recovery here in Houston. And all these movements together understand that what we can do is absolutely change the planet and use this interregnum. Now, I've run out of time, but what I do want to suggest is this, that if we know what time it is on the clock of the world, we can understand. I mean, I've been telling my students, look, we have to go out there and we have to fight and we have to change the world. But there's never been a moment where that's more true. My students have been wanting to change the world for decades. And right now, the changes we make will be changes that last for generations if we get it right, just like the Mondino did. So that's what we have to fight for. If you want to know more, just sign up for this. But most of all, I can't wait to be in solidarity with you and belting out great songs so that we can together win this world that we so much deserve. Thank you so much.